I'm John McQuay with 8541 Tactical, and this is Mail Call Mondays, the show that answers your questions about precision rifles, optics, and equipment. We're here on another Monday with answers to your questions. We've been getting a lot of questions on Databooks, so we're going to cover some of the various different types of Databooks and some different options for you. Now first, let's talk about what a Databook is. A Databook is just simply a place for you to jot down the conditions of what you were shooting in on that specific day. Think of it as your shooter's diary. You want to write down everything about how you were doing, how the rifle was doing, the ammunition was doing, the environmental conditions, and the range conditions that you were shooting in. It's a great tool for you to be able to refer back to, and it allows you to see patterns, see consistencies. It allows you to see improvements in yourself or in the weapon system. And if you have something that's going wrong, you can look back and see how the rifle was performing and how you were performing on a certain date, a certain time, or a certain set of weather conditions. The data book that I have here in front of me is an Impact Databooks modular data book, and it is a nifty little setup where you have a binder and you have pages that you can reorganize in the book however you want. You can order replacement pages based on a little number that's logged down here, and you can build this book up however you want to build it up. Now, if you're starting out and you don't know what pages you want in here, Impact offers pre-made books that have an assortment of different pages. So you'll notice as you use the book what pages you use more and what pages you may not use at all. So you can order replacement pages for what you need, and you can leave out the pages that you don't. As you fill the book up, you can pull out the oldest pages and you can store them away. That way you just keep the pertinent information with you as it goes. It also helps out because if for some reason, if you're a professional sniper and you need to pull a page for a specific report or you need to enter it into evidence, then you can do so, and maybe you won't risk your entire book being called into evidence. This is another point that I want to make real quick for you professional snipers out there. Your data book is discoverable. If you are involved in a situation, your data book can be called into court. It can be entered into evidence. So keep that in mind as you're writing things in here. Make sure that you stay professional and you don't write anything that you would be embarrassed about coming out into court. Stay professional, put the information you need in there. The data book may help you out if it's entered into evidence to demonstrate your training and what you've done in previous situations. So, it's a great tool for the professionals, but for the recreational shooters as well, it is really an excellent thing to have so that you can look back and see how you were doing on various different days. Now, before I get into the details of each one, I'm just going to run down the various books that we have here. This is a full-size Impact modular data book. This one right here is a pocket modular data book from Impact Databooks. So it's quite a bit smaller, a little bit easier to fit in a cargo pocket, but it doesn't quite have the same amount of room to write down information in there. Next, we have the Storm Tactical Pocket data books, and these are designed to be able to fit in the shirt pockets on BDUs or ACUs. So they're really compact. They have a lot of space for you to write information down in here, but again, the drawback is you don't have the room that you have with a full-size book. And finally, we come down to my homemade data book. When I first got back into precision rifle shooting after I got out of the Marine Corps, I didn't have a whole lot of money to spend, and there weren't a lot of pre-made data books like this floating around. So I went ahead and made up my own. And all this is a flexible binder cover that I got at Walmart, and I cut to shape, punched 3 holes in it, got some snap rings, some binder rings from an office supply store, and then the pages inside I just printed out from a website called Sniper's Paradise. They had pre-made data book forms in there that you could just print out on your computer at home and turn them into your own data book. And it's a very cheap easy way to go about it. Now, if you want to go an even cheaper and easier way, just get a notebook. And we'll talk about the information that you need to jot down here in a minute, but just a regular spiral notebook or even a small spiral pad can work great in order to allow you to jot down the information that you need. One final thing that we have laying out here is a round count book. Now, most of the data books will have a spot in them to log in your round count on your rifle. Every day you go out, you want to write down how many rounds that you put through that rifle. That way you have a record for maintenance on the system. You have a record if you decide to go sell the system. And for that reason, I prefer to keep round count books separate from my data book. With the round count book, you can just, when you sell a rifle, you can send the round count book on down the line with it, and so the new owner has an accurate count in black and white of how many shots has been through that barrel. And if you're in a professional environment, then the round count book stays with the rifle. It doesn't necessarily get passed off from shooter to shooter. You want it to stay with the rifle. That way there's always a record there. If the armorer busts open the rifle and needs to take a look at it, he can immediately see how many rounds has been through it. So round count books are great. This is a round count book from Impact Databooks. There are a bunch of other ones out there, but I really like those. They're small, simple. They already come with a hole punch through them. I'll loop a piece of 550 cord through them. That way I can just hang it over the scope or hang it over the barrel on the rifle. Now let's take a look at the kind of data that I jot down in my data book. Now the page that I've got right here is from the match that I shot this weekend. Now, when I go to log down the information in my data book, the first thing I'm going to do is break out my weather meter, power it on, and let it sit there and warm up. I use a Kestrel. I've got a couple of different ones right now. We've been testing an Applied Ballistics Kestrel that is a very, very nice unit, but it is rather expensive. Kestrel weather meters are probably the best way to get the environmental data from your firing point in a clean, concise manner and in a nice little portable package. If you don't have the money to go with a Kestrel weather meter, though, what you can do is tune into your weather channel and see what the weather is at the weather station closest to where your firing point is going to be. That will usually be the nearest airport. Sometimes there are different weather stations out and about when you're in between airports, though. So go on the internet, pull it up, and then jot that information down before you leave the house. If you have a smartphone, generally you can go to weather.com or one of those apps and you can pull up a pretty close idea of what the weather is at your firing point. It's not going to be exact, but it's going to be better than guessing. Now, when we go write down that information, we're going to write down date, time, and the location. Those of you that shoot at the same points time and time again, may be a good idea just to give it a regular name. Like, for instance, this is Red Brush Rifle Range. I know where that's at. If you're shooting out in the sticks and you have access to a GPS, then write down the coordinates. That way there's no question on where it was specifically that you were firing from. Come over here to caliber and ammo and write that in, rifle type and scope. Then the really important information, the environmentals, the temperature, the barometric pressure, and you notice in here I've got STAT written next to it. That's just my little abbreviation to tell me that what I wrote in here is station pressure, not regular barometric pressure. Barometric pressure is calibrated based on altitude, and what I do on my meter is I zero the altitude reference out on it, so it tells me what the pressure is right where I'm standing without any altitude reference. The bullet doesn't care how high you are off the ground when you're firing it or how high above sea level you are when you're firing it. The bullet only cares about how dense the air it's flowing through is. And for that density, you need temperature and you need the pressure that the meter reads where you're at. So I zero out the altitude on it. I didn't calculate density altitude on this because I was using the cheap Kestrel meter and it doesn't read out density altitude. It just reads the temperature and the station pressure for me. The Applied Ballistics Kestrel does read out density altitude, so I could have scribbled that in there, but for whatever reason I didn't at the time. You can go back and you can plug in the information that you have and write in density altitude from one of the density altitude calculators online. It's just an added piece of information, so you can do that if you wish. Angle, we were shooting on a flat range, so no angle there. Now you'll notice here I did not fill out the wind and the light conditions. The reason is the page I'm using here is the shooter diary page, and there's only one spot to log those. And we're shooting over the course of morning to afternoon, so the light conditions and the wind conditions change based on which specific yard line we're shooting on, and they change based on time that's elapsed throughout the day. So I don't bother to fill those in. I will fill in the pertinent information as I go down through the shooter diary page. Now I really like this shooter's diary page because it gives me my spots for my environmental information at the top, and it gives me a real quick way to fill that out, but then it gives me free-form lines down through here that I can just write what I'm doing at each stage. This is what I prefer to do when I'm shooting a match and I'm recording the match in the data book, because I can write a number for each stage, what I'm doing on that stage, and what my settings were for each stage. When you're done, over here in this little gray box, there's a spot for you to write down yard lines and what your dope was for each of those yard lines. This is a really great tool. As you can see, I didn't go back and fill this in yet, but I'll take this information when I'm done and when I'm back here, and I can read over it and make sure everything's correct. Then I can come back and fill this in, so I know on this day, at this yard line, this is what my correct dope was for these environmental conditions. This is where you can go back from time to time and you can check it out and you can see if you're being consistent, if you've got to change, what have you. So it's very nice. Now you see I did run out of room down here at the bottom. Again, one of the reasons I like to use the full-size data books is because I will run out of lines. So I'm scribbling down here on the bottom for the last yard line. Now, some little things that I did here. You'll notice down here on stage number 5, I wrote down that it was a 334 yard and 443 yard barricade drill. There were 2 targets that we were shooting at that range. And I set in my dope was 1.5 mils up for the 334 and 2.6 mils up for the 443 target. And then I came down here at the bottom once I got done shooting that stage, and I wrote good position on top step because we were shooting off of a stair step, and I wrote that I was kneeling with my bipod set in the low position, so that tells me that I have my bipod legs collapsed all the way in. I was on the top step and I was in a kneeling position, and that was fairly steady to engage both those targets. However, I wrote down here that I had a poor position on the antenna pile. There was a piece of an antenna structure set sideways over some tires, and it really was not a stable platform to shoot from. So I just basically noted that in there, so I know the next time that I go out, or if I decide that I want to work on some issues that I had from this shoot, then I can read through my notes from the match and say, okay, I have problems with that, so that's what I want to practice the next time I go out. So it's just little things like that you want to put in there. If I had a headache or had the sniffles or I was sick or the flu, I would note that in there as well. That way if I come back and I go, okay, I had a really bad day that day, I was shooting just really horribly, I could look and say, okay, I wasn't feeling good, or I was sick, or my mind just wasn't into it. Little anecdotal things like that may not seem to matter when you're shooting on that day, but when you come back later and you try to use this data along with other pages to try to determine something that's going on, it's nice to be able to see that and go, okay, well maybe I ought to not weight that as much as I would weight another day when I came out and I was on my A game. So that gives you a really good array of information to plug in here. Again, this is the shooter's diary page. Now there are a couple of other pages in the impact data books that I really like. I've got them set out here, and we'll start off with the cold bore tracking page. I was really happy when they brought this page out because it gives me a quick, easy place to track everything that occurs with my cold bore shot. And the options they give you here: date, time, temperature, humidity, barometric pressure, altitude, range, position. And then there are two check boxes here. One says CB and one says CCB. Well, the environmental conditions up here are fairly self-explanatory. The CB and CCB. CB stands for cold bore. CCB stands for cold clean bore. Now, some rifles will group right together with their cold bore, their cold clean bore, and their warm bore. Not many, but some will. Most rifles that are high-end precision rifles will group cold bore and warm bore together, but they will generally group their cold clean bore separately. So if you come out and you've cleaned the barrel of your rifle, gotten all that nasty copper and carbon out of it, and you come out to the range and you shoot, you're going to mark that it's a cold clean bore, and you're going to probably notice a significant deviation from what your standard zero is on that rifle. And so you'll plot that on the target. And this is very, very good information to have. First of all, it saves you from just launching that first shot into nowhere. And then secondly, it shows detail in your book. For professional shooters, this is very, very important, because when you go into court, you can demonstrate that you knew exactly what your rifle would do based upon history, and you can demonstrate that you've tested it over history. So a very important piece of information to have. But for the rest of us, you can document, so the next time some guy comes out and tells you that you'll always have cold bore deviation, or you'll always have cold clean bore deviation, or your shot will always be off for the first shot of the day, you can say, yeah, no, not for me, or not for this rifle, or it doesn't work that way for what I'm doing. So it's a great way to log that in. Now the notes field, really, really important on here. Make sure that you write in the notes if you've changed anything, if you messed anything up, again, how you're feeling, anything that's out of the ordinary that may have caused a deviation in that shot, put it in the notes field. It may even be a good idea to put in there if it was cloudy, if it was bright sunlight, anything that you think may have affected the shot. And then down here on the target, you can plot your shot call if you want, but you definitely want to plot your shot impact on here. And we'll talk about call versus impact in just a minute. So the cold bore target is a cold bore page is a very, very nice page to have in your book. Next page that I really like is the 21 dot drill page. Now, if you've gone on Sniper's Hide and you've heard people talk about the dot drill, basically it is a series of dots and you shoot them in a specific order, or you can just go out and shoot one shot on each dot from the prone, however you really want to shoot it. But this lays that out very well. You have your cold bore dot up here at the top, and then you have 4 rows of 5 dots that you can go through and shoot individually. And it has pretty much all the same environmental information up here. It has a spot for the target range, the position, if you're supported, unsupported, etc. And then over here, your wind and light conditions. The important part is down here. You have the ability to write in different elevation and windage corrections if you need to do so for each different shot. And you have a little spot on there that you can plot what your shot call is. Now, when you break a shot, before you look down range and see where that bullet hole went, you should know that, okay, the shot went high, the shot went low, I saw it, the crosshairs right dead center of it when it broke. The call is the last place that you saw the crosshairs when the shot broke, where you saw that rifle aimed. So you put your call down here, and then you look down range and you plot your shot on the target. If you have a situation where you can't call your shot because you don't have any idea where the crosshairs were when that rifle fired, then you need to evaluate what you're doing in your shooting. You may have a flinch, you may have some other issues that are allowing the rifle to drift off target before it fires. So call and plot are really important on your pages to keep that nice, precise data. We're going to go through these really quickly because the top of these pages are pretty much the same. This is a really slick page to have because you have mill value, target range, elevation, wind, call, plot, and end data for each individual shot. This is great, so if you go out and you have a bunch of targets arrayed, say, along a valley floor, and you're going to shoot varying targets at varying ranges, this is really good because you can write down all your information to begin with, the information you use to attempt to engage the target, where you called your shot, where you plotted your shot, and then you can write your correct data on there. And that will help you later on when you're trying to figure out what your true dope is for your rifle. And finally, we have a page that's just a free-form page. So if you're using a strange shaped target, something out of the ordinary, then you can draw your own target shapes in and plot and call based on that. This is just really nice because a lot of times I'm shooting a different array of targets and I don't want to have to make sure that I have pages that line up with the specific targets. Now, both with Impact Databooks and Storm Tactical, you can go on their website and you can download targets that correspond with the data book pages in their books. So if that's a concern for you, you can go out and do that, and they match up perfectly, and they're really good if you want to be very precise with plotting your shots and saving your targets. The array of options available for you in this day and age with data books is pretty massive. You can go from the big bad data books with everything that you could possibly want to record all the way down to just your homemade or your notebook stuff. Really, it's going to be up to you. The key thing is you're writing down your environmental data. You're writing down how you feel, and then you're writing down how the gun performed on that day. Even if you don't go to the details of plotting each and every shot in your data book pages, at least go to the trouble of writing the environmental data down and writing how the gun performed and how you felt and what you did on that day. I really enjoy it because I can look back through my data book and I can see if there's a skill that I haven't trained on in a while and I need to correct that. Now, one of the questions you guys did send out on the data books is, how do we organize them? Well, on my data book, I like to organize it first of all by gun. So if I'm keeping data for a couple of different guns in one book, because maybe I'm switching between two or I don't want to have two separate books for a gun, then that's the way I separate it first. Then the pages are set in there in chronological order. That way it's real quick for me to flip back through what days I've shot and see what pages are where. I don't really go into any more detail with subdividing them from there. If with the modular data book, I get into a situation where I need to compare different environmental conditions or similar environmental conditions, then the book allows me just to pop the binder, pull the pages out, and sort them in front of me. The Storm Tactical modular data books also allow you to do the same thing, so you're not just stuck into one manufacturer. You will very often find, though, between different data books that the binder size is just different enough that pages from one manufacturer won't fit in another manufacturer's binder. So keep that in mind when you're comparing the different books. Now, I do have a couple of different books here. I've tried several different ones. This one is actually for my AR-10. This one is kind of a catch-all book. It's for the Accuracy International, but it's also got some data from some of the different Remingtons in it. One thing that I did do on it is I got some of these page dividers. See if I can get one here. I got some of these page dividers from Impact Databooks, and they're really nifty to go in here because I can actually divide up the blank pages, the pages I have not written in yet. So when I want a certain type of page for that day, it makes it a whole lot quicker for me to find those pages. I also use the dividers to divide up the sections between target type stuff and field type shooting stuff that I might need in a professional capacity. So I can come in here and I can do range cards, field sketches, or I even have pages for an observation log in here. So if I want to keep an observation log in my book, I can do so. At the end of the day, make sure you log in your data. Now, you saw that on this page I've been lazy, I've been procrastinating, I still haven't gone in and filled in that table. If I don't do that tonight, I'll forget about it, and it'll be 3 weeks down the road before I open this and look this book up again and look at this page and see that I haven't logged that information in. So try to be quick with logging your information in. Do so right at the end of the day, especially if you haven't been real detailed in what you're writing in. Make sure you do it while you're still fresh. While it's still fresh in your mind, you haven't allowed time to cloud any of the things you're remembering. I can't speak today, sorry about that. So make sure that you're logging things as quickly as possible. It may seem at first that you're really taking a lot of time on the range to stop and write in your book instead of shooting, but it really will help you later on. Especially those cold bore tracking pages, I've actually used those to diagnose problems in rifles before. So make sure that you're logging that kind of stuff in. If anything, the cold bore tracking page is worth its weight in gold. Again, it's a great aid. And you can do the same thing in a notebook if you want to do so. Just make sure you're writing all the pertinent data down in a notebook. The cost of these data books is fairly minimal. Now again, I've got mine all set up here with these nice nylon covers on them. These were nylon covers that we were producing, so I know you guys are going to ask me where you can get those. We are not producing them right now. We may start doing so again sometime in the future. And if you just keep an eye on our website and our Facebook page, I'll let you know when we're producing them again. But that's all on hold for right now. Impact Databooks and Storm both offer nylon covers for their data books, so you can order them direct from them. If you decide to purchase from either of those two companies. Now there are about 1,000,001 different data books out there, so if I didn't cover one that you have ordered or your specific data book or a data book that your company produces, I'm sorry, there are a gob of them out there. Most of them do about the same thing. What it is just personal preference on how you like the pages laid out. Impact Databooks has a really great website where you can go and look at the individual pages, and you can actually build your own data book if you wish to do it that way. Or again, you can buy the pre-made one. Storm Tactical also allows you to buy pre-made books and buy refill pages for their books. Both companies also offer pre-made spiral data books, so they're already set up. I do not like spiral data books though. And then when I say spiral data books, I mean data books that have these rings on here. I don't like them for the long term because, first of all, when you use up all the pages in them, you may use up all the pages that you normally use and then be left with a data book full of pages that you never use, and you got to scrap it out, throw it on the shelf, what have you. You also don't have the ability to easily remove old pages and keep just the new fresh data in there. So I really like the 3-ring binder type data books, and that's what I would suggest that you go with, especially if you're a new shooter. If you're really trying to save cost, then you can go with the spirals, but I don't think the price difference is enough to justify the added trouble of the spiral data books. You can get them with Write and Rain paper or regular paper. Most companies out there that produce data books will produce them in both varieties. The Write and Rain paper is a little bit heavier duty. It is a little more expensive though, so you might want to think about that. What I will usually do is my data books are ordered with the regular paper that they use, and then I will keep a Write and Rain notebook with me. So if it's raining, I'll leave my data book in a Ziploc bag packed away in my pack, and I'll write all the important information down in a Write and Rain notebook. And then when I get back home or I get back to classroom or etc., I will write it over into the data book. That way it's saved in one spot, but I don't have to risk the data book getting damaged. A lot of guys ask about other things to keep in the data book. Calculator is a great thing to keep in there. In the back of this one, I've got a couple of things tossed in here, but the main one that is really nice to have is a MilDot Master. This is just simply a slide rule calculator to give you a real quick mil conversion into range. So if you know the size of your target, then you can compute the distance of your target based upon the size and the reticle. Real quick slide rule, real easy to use, doesn't require batteries. It can get wet, it's not going to get harmed. So I could do a whole episode on the Mil.Master. We may do that if you guys really have a great desire to do so, but it's just one of those backups that I like to keep in the back of my book. Another one that I throw back here, you can tell I kind of like the slide rules. This is an FDAC, and that is a field density altitude compensator. Really fancy, high-speed, low-drag name for a slide rule ballistic computer. Adaptive produces these nifty little guys, and this one is based on the M118LR round. And it's just a slide rule so that I can check what my dope should be based upon my density altitude, and it's actually got a density altitude table on here, so you can look at it pressure versus temperature and see what your density altitude is. And then you can come down here and slide it over and see what your dope is at varying density altitudes. As I said, this one is for M118LR through a M24 or M40A1. So it's not going to be exact for all the 308s out there, but I have a load that's very close to M118LR, and so this works for combat accuracy with that system. Again, it doesn't take batteries, it's waterproof, it's very difficult to crush or break this thing, so it's a nice thing to have when you have one of those bad days that everything fails. That's about it for Databooks that I can think of off the top of my head. I hope I answered a lot of the questions that you guys sent us on them. If not, you can always leave them in the comment section below or send them to us on Facebook or Twitter. If you've liked this episode, please give us a thumbs up. If you're a subscriber, thank you very much. And please don't forget to share our videos. Share them on your Facebook pages, on your forums, and share them far and wide. It really helps us out. Until next time. Get out and shoot!